I'm going to read the public comments instruction and then the meeting will start. Or public comments will be provided or maybe provided live during the Public Safety Emergency Preparedness Commission's meeting by the first registering for the Zoom meeting in advance by providing email address and a name. People who register will receive a link to join the commission meeting in order to give comments. All registered meeting attendees who wish to speak must click on the raise hand icon when the chair calls for public comments. If participating by calling in, dial *9 to use the raise hand feature. And when you are called upon, hit *6 to unmute your phone. Your phone number will display in the live meeting and staff will call the speaker to begin. All comments provided shall be limited to 2 minutes, and all members of the public will be limited to 1 comment per item, per agenda item, and 1 comment for non-agenda items. The online written comments form previously used is no longer be available for public comments. Pledge of Allegiance. Tony, do we have the flag?
I believe they will put, there you go.
Okay, there we go. All right, commissioners, please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to
to
the
the
republic
republic
which
which
stands
stands
one nation
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Tony, I need your help in the roll call.
Yes, no problem. I have Clendenin, Ellis, Han Lin, Joe Nichols, Vicki Young, and then I have somebody on the phone. Is that Jonathan? It looks like I have Jonathan on the phone. Tony. Oh, awesome. I'm glad you could join us tonight.
Yeah.
And so I do not see Alex. Alec Bittenkurt, not you, Alex, sorry. Alec Bittenkurt, our commissioner. Are you on the phone or are you on the call? Okay, I will mark him as absent. Councilmember Dominguez notified me that she got held up at work, so she's not going to be able to make it to the meeting this evening, so we'll proceed without her. Back to you, Han.
All right, thank you so much. So do we need the seating of the alternates?
Yes, we will seat Joe as a commissioner this evening, and Vicki will be seated as an alternate or as a commissioner as well this evening. Thank you.
All right. We're moving on to item 5, approval of the agenda. Would anyone entertain that motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay,
Thank you.
all in favor?
Aye.
I think I have to roll call it again, if I remember
Oh, that's
correctly.
right.
So
Yes.
sorry, I'm
I always
toggling.
get this wrong.
I turned my screen off because I'm toggling back and forth between minutes and this thing. And so, yeah, I don't want to screw up. Motion to approve, Paul,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
Aye.
Vicki,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Aye.
Han,
Yes.
and Nichols.
Yes.
I think we're good. Motion to approve the agenda has passed.
Great, thank you. Then we do need to have the motion to approve the meeting minutes of November 12, 2020.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Give me 1 second. Okay, I'm going to go through roll call again. Paul,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
Vicki,
Yes.
Joe Nichols,
Yes.
Han,
Yes.
and Jonathan.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion to approve the minutes has passed.
Thank you, Tony. All right. Public forum. Those interested are invited to address the commission on any subject not on tonight's agenda orally via Zoom. Speakers may provide their name and city of residence for the record, and comments may be limited to 2 minutes or less at the chair's discretion or the vice chair. Let's limit that to 2 minutes. As an item not listed on the agenda, no response is required from the city staff or the commission, and no action can be taken. Moving on to announcements. Are there any announcements?
Tonight we have a presentation. Another thing that I wanted to make an announcement about is there's been some changes to the commission bylaws in the handbook. The most significant of changes includes that there are no longer commissioner term limits, and that the chair and vice chair can serve 3 consecutive terms in that role, and each commission now has a youth non-voting seat, so they should encourage residents in grades 9 through 12 to apply. Moving on, we have a presentation by Linda Gates, I believe, and Lee Hawk are on the line right now to take care of that.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Do you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Tony, for helping us to set this up. My name is Lee Ha-im, an associate civil engineer with the engineering department, and I am also the project manager for the Park and Recreation Master Plan update. We also have our consultant, Gate and Associate, joining us today, and our consultant will be providing a presentation on the progress of the master plan update, particularly of what we have completed so far and what is our next step. With that being said, I'm gonna turn this to Linda Gate, the principal project managers with Gate and Associates.
Thank you very much, Liak. So I'm very excited to be here tonight. I firmly believe that, and you probably do too, that a well-designed park and recreation system is integral to sort of creating a healthy, dynamic community in Milpitas. Gates and Associates, our landscape architects, our mission is to get people outside, so we're very happy to be working on this project. Next slide. This is the purpose of this project. Basically, it's an update to the existing park and recreation master plan. We assess the existing city parks, facilities, and programs. Go out and look at them. Addition in this project that you don't always do in a park and recreation master plan, we also looked at the fee structure of a lot of your programs and compared them and benchmarked them against other communities and what kind of programs they were offering. So we could look at the level of cost recovery the city might be able to target in the future. So that's part of this project. Obviously, working with the community, a number of surveys and stuff, because this plan needs to be for Milpitas. It's not some other city, it's for Milpitas. What you guys want, what you need, what you value. The idea would be we create a master plan as well as a roadmap that will be implemented over the next 10 years. So the staff will understand as they move forward and the city council as they budget funds, what people want to do, what's the highest priority, and they can systematically move through the park and recreation system. Next slide. So one of the things that's really great about what we're able to do here is that concurrent with doing the park and recreation master plan, the general plan has also been being updated. And often these documents are not completely in sync, but we are able to make, to sort of collaborate with your general plan team to make sure we're have the same message. And a couple of things that are coming out of the general plan, a couple of recommendations that I think really influence the park and recreation master plan is one, we want to make sure we serve the needs of all the residents of Milpitas, all the different ethnic groups, teens, seniors, people with the vulnerable population. It needs to fit all those people, even people who aren't using the parks now. Why aren't you, and what can we do to entice you back to use them? And secondly, I think really important, we have to collaborate with other agencies such as the school district and the county, because we're not growing any more land in Milpitas, although we're adding a lot more population. So we really need to be partnering on correctly using public resources for multiple public benefits. Next slides. Even more interesting is you're also updating your Milpitas Metro specific plan. And this has been very interesting because they're talking about different densities of population. Milpitas has traditionally been a lot of single family homes. People have backyards and such, but you have a new population moving in that's really going to use the parks as their backyard. So this has been interesting to collaborate with them also. And then you have the bikeway and pedestrian master plan at the same time. I mean, Milpitas has been busy these last few years, and making it so people can easily get to parks, not always in their car, is really critical to how often people use parks. So it's really been great to collaborate with that. I said before, this is an update to the 2008 Park and Recreation Master Plan. So we're building upon all these efforts to create something for the city. Next slide. So in the 2008 master plan identified a number of improvements, and the city since that plan invested over $26 million in improvements. So this is how you create the plan and then you implement the improvements. And you had new synthetic fields and pool rehab at Milpitas Sports Center, new skate park, a number of playgrounds got redesigned. So throughout the city, improvements have been made based on the direction created in that master plan. Next slide. So as I mentioned, our efforts to date, what we've been doing, we went around and looked at all 36 parks and 6 facilities, sort of what things needed repair, what things were working well, and also what opportunities exist. Maybe if new uses are emerging, where could we fit new uses in? We're also looking at the demographics, how, Milpitas is very culturally diverse. They are a growing population, and interestingly, they're growing because they're both aging. Your population is aging. But as I said, you also have young families and new residents moving in that may be living at higher density. So you have these two interesting trends impacting your park system. Just as with the programs, we look at benchmarking with other communities, we do the same thing and compare Milpitas Park, the number of acres you have per thousand, number of soccer fields you have per thousand, with other communities, just as a benchmarking tool, not so that we would do the same thing as another community, but just to know how we compare, because that enables us to make informed decisions about the kind of standards we're setting out. Next slide. So as I said, we're doing this in community outreach in sort of 3 rounds. In the first round, we were asking people what they liked about their existing parks and what they wanted to see. We did an online survey. We were able to have 2 in-person events, which was wonderful to be able to talk directly to people. In the second round, based on the things we found out in the first round, we sort of created some focus groups on specific topics to dig into them a little bit deeper. And we also had a virtual town halls. There was a survey that also went out with the second round. And we're getting ready to enter the third round, which is where we come back with recommendations and people then sort of can comment on those recommendations. So this is sort of the community engagement we've done so far. Next slide. So based on the community engagement so far, in round 1, we had over 700 participants. We were able to conduct it in English, Spanish, Chinese, and Vietnamese. What people liked were the playgrounds, swim facilities, trails and pathways ranked really high. What they want to see, more updated playgrounds. They want, sort of the cooler play equipment, community events, indoor sports, exercise stations. So people are actually pretty satisfied with the park system. They just want to sort of be updating and expanding their uses a little bit. Had very positive things to say about the park system. Next slide. So in round 2, we then asked people to comment specifically on individual parks. So they could go on an interactive map and pull up the park that is near their house. And if somebody, there had been some suggestions based on our site analysis in the community about different things could happen at parks. And they say, oh yes, I'd love to see a dog park here, or it would be really great if you could add some shade in this park. So they can make specific recommendations about individual parks. We also had, as I said, focus groups. We wanted to talk to teens because that's one user group we find isn't using the parks that much, and why not? The new residents that I mentioned, people that are moving in recently to Milpitas who maybe don't have the traditional backyard, what are the kinds of things they're looking for, social services and the sports groups. And then we conducted 2 virtual town halls. So that's some of the things we did in phase 2. We wanted to share, next slide. And I thought I'd briefly share with you just from those different groups some of the things we heard. So from the sports groups, very willing to be collaborative. I mean, Milpitas, as I said, doesn't have a lot of extra land. So often we're laying soccer and cricket and baseball and different things overlaying, and with the whole way to schedule and work that through. Talked about the kind of improvements like parking, storage, and restroom they needed, and how we could maybe expand the usability of some fields by introducing things like synthetic turf or lighting, and very much the joint use collaboration with the school district, particularly as the schools have recently expanded and some of the fields that the Parks Department was using were no longer available. So we are currently collaborating with them on finding ways to address those park needs. It was interesting talking to the new residents, because one of the things that was really important to them was to use their parks to meet their neighbors. During this period of shelter in place, and even as we move in the future where people maybe are more working from home, the parks provide a place where they can interact with other people. And so they like to like grouped exercise stations where there were a number in the same area where they get to talk to people, or maybe where there's a planned activity in the park, like a yoga in the morning class. They need more amenities in the park. When there's only like one set of tennis courts or something, it's too, everybody comes and that can't be used. So they wanted to add other activities. So if you showed up at the park and the tennis courts were being used, you could do something else, some more activities. And then they have a desire for reservable rental space, like group picnic areas, like a shade structure. Parking sometimes is a challenge when they reserve it for family events, so maybe a permit parking thing, and access the building. So these are kinds of things they were looking for. These are the things the Parks Department then understands about the needs. Teens were very interested in seeing sort of informal uses geared towards them. They like cool, updated parks. They did like the aging infrastructure. They'd like to see more Wi-Fi and such like that in parks. The benches, when they were sort of looking a little tired, they sort of said, it'd be nice to upgrade those. But on the flip side, they also really were interested in sustainability in the parks and having lots of trees and interaction with nature. So they very much valued that. They were concerned about use conflicts when somebody might be skating down a sidewalk and somebody's pushing a stroller or walking a dog. So they wanted the paths to be wider, because they don't feel as welcome as the parks as they might be. They like things like ping pong and foosball, and they love food trucks and astronomy night. Parents have a lot of safety concerns about their teens using the park. So how do we make them feel more secure? And teens' primary use of parks is during the summer, because during the winter between school and homework, they can't use the parks that much. So they're like, make them more comfortable with shade and water, so it's more attractive for us to use during the summer. And then finally, a lot of people don't realize the role that your Parks Department plays in social services, particularly in the period we've been going through now, where they've been sort of a clearinghouse helping people find, shelter or food or different kind of supplies they needed. And this is an area that the community feels they need to grow with sort of, and inclusion also, making the playgrounds and everything inclusive, intergenerational. So a lot of effort being sort of on that equitability and parity and throughout the system. So these are some of the topics that were very Milpitas focused. Next slide. So when we had the town hall, so we talked to the overall community. I'm sure you all know the amazing growth and interest in cricket and the challenge of adding that into your already challenging sports program. I mentioned already inclusive playgrounds and amenities so that everybody plays together. They want classes on weekends and weeknights, and some of the new programs they wanted to look at, dog training, cooking, equine therapy. I mean, a lot of interesting ideas for new classes. And finally, connectivity. Walking and biking is a huge demand, and being able to move to the parks conveniently without having to get in their car was very important. Next slide. So what's happening right now is we are looking at these joint use opportunities of the school district, because that's very critical that we find a way to meet the sports needs. We'll be developing some prioritization criteria. So we have, a long laundry list of projects that people would like to undertake. How do we figure out which ones to move forward first and second? We have the draft recommendations that I said will be part of this next round, where people can look at what we're suggesting and respond to that. And we'll take that and put it into administrative draft that sort of has short, medium, and long-term project recommendations. And we're also doing cost estimates on some of these recommendations so the city can begin to see over the next 10 years, if we want to do this, how much are we going to have to invest? Next slide. So I wanted to share with you, and I hope that you share with neighbors and friends. We have a project website that you can visit to find out what's going on, to share your thoughts on it, something you noticed, something that's bothering your park, something you really like, something you've seen in another community you think we could add. It takes a village to build a park system, and we are coming to you to share with you what we're up to so that you can share with your friends, and also feel free to share with us any thoughts you have about what you would like to see in the Milpitas Park and Recreation System. And I think that's the last slide. Yes, questions and comments?
Thank you, Linda, for the presentation.
Yeah, it's fun, huh? I know I'm going really fast, but I come to being respectful of these meetings. I'm crashing, you know. It's like...
Oh, did Tony tell you that first?
I do have a question for you, Linda.
Yes, yes.
So you had mentioned something about one of the groups that you guys surveyed, mentioned something about maybe dog parks as part of the plan. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Right now, Milpitas only has one dog-specific park, correct?
Up in the county park, yes.
11.
Yeah, at 11.
Okay.
Yes. But as you can imagine, with more and more people having adopted pets in the last 9 months, I have a feeling this is going to be even more popular than we thought it was 9 months ago.
Yeah, that's all I have right now.
Yeah. I kind of find it a bit of an oxymoron of having Wi-Fi when you're outdoors.
Yeah, I know.
It's like the kids, and this is for the teens because they're there on their phones and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, why are you getting together? You're on your phone.
I know.
And you're sitting right next to each other.
Sending text messages to each other. I get on my nephews all the time for that.
But our mission, as I said, to get people outside. And if feeling that you're still connected when you're outside helps get you outside, then that's what we need to do. You know what I mean? So, and frankly, with all of us maybe starting to work from home, you know, going forward, it may not be the same commute. You may be finding yourself walking down to the neighborhood park and getting some sunshine and doing a little working from home too. So I would love to see parks become more a part of everyone's daily life. It would be really wonderful.
So Linda,
I have a question.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I have a question that I just want to throw out there. Are we kind of looking to put drought-resistant plants and stuff? Because I think one of the problems is that, you know, with the rainfall in our state just fluctuating, one of the things is looking at those type of things that are going to, you know, people are going to be attracted to, but it'd be nice if we could try to keep it something that would bring people in without having to rely on a lot of water.
I can kind of comment to that too. Is it in the park that's in my neighborhood, they got a well, and that's not potable water. They consider that something that they can feed back in and water their plants, you know. So I know that's around here and there, not every place.
So that has come up multiple times, the idea of sort of a commitment to sort of ecological resilience, the idea that we use lawns in those areas where you need them to play, that we do some habitat, that there's a greater diversity of plants, and balancing that, you know, and then there's a lot of smart technology too, in terms of efficient irrigation systems and solar. So I think this is, as I said, this is part of the Milpitas flavor, that commitment to sort of their park system modeling that, you know, resilience. So yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Linda?
Well, if you think of something later on, because I always think of something the next day, or somebody will make a comment 3 days later, and it's like, just, you know, email Leac or one of us, and we want it. We want it all. Give it to us. Okay.
Yeah, we will.
All right.
And I'm looking forward to the joint use agreement between you and the district.
Well, between the city and the district.
This- oh, not you.
It'd be great if I was, but
Yeah.
me too. Me too. Okay. Anyone
Thank
else
you.
have any questions? Thank you for letting me crash your meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. You're welcome to stay. I'm not kicking you off, Linda.
Oh, no, that's okay. I'm going to leave.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right.
Thank
Move
you, everyone.
to B. And that's the election of 2021 Commission Chair and Vice Chair. Tony, do we do the nomination?
Yeah, so someone needs to nominate themselves or someone else who would like to sit as the chair of the commission.
I would like to nominate the current vice chair to be the chair for 2021, 2022. Nominate.
Well, actually, up until Tony said something earlier, I was under the impression that I was going to term out in June of this year, so I was kind of done.
Gotcha.
Nope.
You can't leave. When they said you can't, there's no term limits, that means you have to stay.
This
Right.
is like the Hotel California. Huh?
You stepped in and you're
I was
stuck.
just thinking that.
Not only staying, you're moving from vice chair to chair. And if you are going to accept the nomination, I'd like to hear a confirmation for that too.
Well,
Okay.
I'd like to nominate that you continue in the role unless you're averse to it.
Okay, Tony, help.
It's a matter, do you accept the nomination, in which case then we'll do a vote. Either way, we'll do a vote between the two of you. Otherwise, if one of you wants to step back, you cannot accept the nomination, in which case then we vote that the individual who stays will then be voted in as the chair.
Vicky's got her hand up.
Yeah, Vicky's got a question.
I also, can I nominate someone?
Yes, the
I've been
floor is
working-
open.
I've been working with Don for like 4 years. I think he's very knowledgeable and hardworking. So I'd like to nominate Don. He's the chair or vice chair.
Okay.
Great.
Hardworking is
an-
one thing. Being in that spot is, yeah.
Okay, so before we get too far ahead, Paul, do you accept your nomination from Han?
I'm going to decline.
Okay. Han,
Mainly because I would like to see her continue in that role.
okay. Han, do you accept your nomination as chair?
Okay. Yes.
And Don, you've been nominated as chair as well. Do you accept your nomination as chair? I'm gonna need like a roadmap to keep all this.
No, I'll decline that
Decline
for
it?
now.
Okay. Okay, so right now, we just have Han accepting the nomination. So commissioners, please say aye if you vote in approval for Han to stay as chair of the commission.
Aye.
Aye.
Jonathan,
I
Vicky?
Hi.
Okay, Han, it's you. Now we need nominations to elect a vice chair.
Okay, Paul. I'm looking at you again. If I'm staying in the same seat, I'm nominating you as vice chair as well for this year.
Well, since I put you back in that seat, or put you on the hot seat anyway, I guess I accept that nomination.
Okay, and Don, you were also nominated as vice chair. Do you want to accept that nomination, and then we will have a vote?
Ooh, I vote for Don.
With that comment, no. If Paul won't accept it, I'll.
I think Paul did accept, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
Paul.
Don, is that a no? You're declining the nomination?
Yep.
Okay. Can I get a yay or nay for vice chair for Paul Ellis? Joe Nichols.
Aye.
Aye.
Han.
Aye.
Jonathan.
Aye.
And Vicky.
Aye.
That's painful every year we do this.
But you
It's-
can
But
just
thank you, Paul.
you can just
Thank you
feel
both.
the enthusiasm, can't you?
It's one of those, everybody take one step forward who wants to be it, and everybody steps back.
Kind of. All right.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Don, and thank you, everyone, for the confidence and the trust in for Han and Paul on the chair and the vice chair role.
Thank you.
Moving on. Are we all done here?
Yep.
Okay, C, fiscal year 2020, 2021 work plan.
Okay. So at last meeting, we put together a work plan. It went to council, it got approved. But we need to have you guys signed up to the specific tasks that we had planned on doing. We can't do, I believe, more than 2 people per task. And just because you're not on a committee for something doesn't mean you won't necessarily participate in it. But due to Brown Act rules, we can't have a quorum of 3 or more together working on any one particular item. So just because you're not assigned to it doesn't mean you won't participate in it. It just means you won't necessarily be a lead in it. So the first one we had was Neighbor Fest, but that one's been put on hold due to COVID because it's personal interaction. The second one is Technology and Collaboration Initiative. So I think that one, it was about taking out the presentations that we have already created, so you don't actually have to get into the technology too much other than attend Zoom meetings. But you would go out to promote, say like at your Rotary, which is still meeting, Kiwanis meetings are still meeting, and you would go out to those clubs or other groups, HOAs, PTAs, whatever. You would go out to the groups and you would then do a presentation on this is what CERT is, or this is what Alert SCC is, or this is what, you know, any one of the programs that we have at this point in time in their limited capacity, but we'll go back to full capacity, but they still go on at this point. So I need 1 to 2 volunteers who would be willing to make those presentations to those groups.
Nicholas, raise your hand.
Yeah, that's something I'd like to take on, Tony.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to assign Joe. Okay, I'm going to turn my camera off only because I'm bouncing back and forth trying to read and talk and it gets complicated.
Yeah, Tony, can you just recap very quickly what the items are so that, you know, kind of have
absolutely.
a perspective?
Okay, so we have Neighbor Fest, like I mentioned, everyone will participate in that and it's on hold. Technology Collaboration Initiative, the PowerPoints were put together. So really it's a matter of what you feel comfortable with going to a group and then giving like a 15-minute spiel on this is what the program is, such as CERT, RACES, Alert SCC, whatever the topic you choose. And then you would go to these groups and basically advertise the program to whichever group you get your meeting set up with. Then we have Map Your Neighborhood. That one's also on hold. That one's been kind of an ongoing thing and it's gotten a little bit of traction, but we definitely want to keep it. We need some more momentum, but COVID really sidelined it. So that's kind of off the table for right now, because again, that goes back to personal interaction. Then there is the Business Emergency Preparedness Program. We have, I believe, Joe, you were working on it before, and I want to say Jonathan, maybe?
I was working on it.
Okay, Jonathan and Joe were on it. Okay. So the plan to that one was really kind of work more hand in hand with the chamber. And there's a lot of business preparedness materials, and take those materials to the chamber and or business, like one of them does a luncheon on Mondays. I don't know if they do it now, it's probably virtual now, but taking it to the business community and getting them prepared for disasters. So it's more directed at getting emergency plans put in place for your company.
And a comment to that too is they can get electronic a lot of the pamphlets and things like that, which they can kind of hand out that way too, at least give them the URLs or whatever.
Yeah, COVID's definitely made everything very flexible, so things can be done in multiple different ways. Okay, so and then lastly we have, and so Chief Hernandez, you inherited this one. I don't know if you were there at the last meeting, but Armando, Chief Corpus, excuse me, was like, "Yep, we'll do that." So we carry on the tradition. It got voted in as a work plan. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but we wanted to be more participatory in the Neighborhood Watch program. So I don't know who's in PCR right now, but I don't know if it's Speckenhoyer or John Mock still, or.
No, it's Sergeant Speckenhauer, and
Okay.
he's the liaison with the commission anyway, so that's a good
Perfect.
fit.
Okay, perfect. We'll put that together. So if you guys choose to be on that committee, you would work with Sergeant Speckenhoyer on in whatever format you guys are delivering national, or not national, excuse me, the other one, Neighborhood Watch. Be kind of joining on part of that. When Sergeant Hinckley was in PCR, I used to do it with him in person all the time. So it's a very natural fit to bring in like map your neighborhood and talk emergency preparedness alongside the Neighborhood Watch program. They do fit very well together.
Yeah, and even the CERT too.
Yeah, exactly. So the 3 that are on the table for you guys to sign up, I can't have any more than you can't. I'm going to say, because we can only have 3 we can work on, and there can only be 2 per seat at most. Obviously, some people would be doubled up. It looks like, so Vicky, with Alec is missing. I'm just going to assign him because he didn't show up. So whatever's left. Okay. So why don't we go, Han, what would you like to work on?
I think I was on the Neighbor Fest.
Okay. And everyone will be on Neighbor Fest. So right now, the only ones you can pick from are technology and collaboration, which is the presentations to the social clubs, which might be great for you as past president of the Rotary. The Business Emergency Preparedness Program, and then the collaboration with Milpitas PD.
Put me on there.
Okay, which one would you like, Han?
Whichever you feel that I fit in.
I think you would be a great fit in the business emergency, or excuse me, the technology one, because you have a lot of the school district contacts.
All right.
And
especially like the PTA meetings and things like that, that we don't, especially have.
You're very involved in those. They know who you are, so it's not as cold call necessarily walking into it. Okay.
I'll start bringing Paul to the PTA meetings and stuff.
All right, Paul, as vice chairman, I'll let you go ahead and pick next. What would you like?
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to let everybody else pick, and whatever's left, you can plug me into.
Okay. Joe, what did you say you wanted to do?
The technology and collaboration.
Okay. Okay, so that'll be with Han. Joe. Don, what would you like to work on? We have with PD, and we have the business emergency preparedness.
I think I can go with the PD, which is the what you call it? Yeah.
Okay.
The watch, neighborhood watch.
Got it. Okay, and then Jonathan, what would you like?
You can basically put me anywhere you want, Tony.
Okay.
I still have all the FEMA material from the business programs. I was actually handing it out individually to small businesses before this whole thing hit. I
why don't I go ahead
I'll send you. I think
keep you there because you do have the materials. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've even got some materials too.
Okay, so I have Paul without a spot yet. Vicky, Vicky, I didn't call on you, did I?
No.
What would you like to work on? We have PD or the Business Emergency Preparedness Program.
I can do the PD, but what's that? If you don't have the business emergency, what's that? What does that do?
You would get the emergency preparedness information and supply it to businesses. You'd probably make a presentation with Jonathan to like the chamber that, we have this material. It'll help your business be better prepared for disaster. So you would kind of talk to the businesses about getting their companies prepared.
I think I'll do with the PD, which is
the PD with Dawn. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that means Paul, I'm going to put you on business preparedness with Jonathan. And then Alec, I will just fit him in the next time I talk to him because I can't put 3 people in anything. So I think we're good at this point. Okay, so I'll touch base with you guys after commission to just kind of give you, here's what we have, here's what you need to be doing, working on. I believe we'll be making a report in December again, like they had us do last time. And I did find out that our goals, our work plans need to run fiscal year, not calendar. So this will be in place for the next couple of months that you'll work on. So if you're not happy in the spot that you're in right now, not a big deal. In June, we will reevaluate this, reevaluate what we're going to hold on to with COVID, and we can reassign positioning if you guys aren't happy doing what you guys are doing, what you've signed up for this evening. So I think I have that information covered, Han, unless anyone has a question for me.
The one thing is, if we have the roadmap as who's where, we can also kind of say, oh, I run into someone that a better fit would be to connect with them, sort of thing.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
So at least we know who the other players are, what their positions are, so we can say, hey, how about you connect with this person here? And then they can, you know, get you the information or whatever that might be appropriate. Because you run into people just, you know, day-to-day kind of thing.
Yeah. And I wanted to let everybody know, it looks like Councilmember Dominguez is here. You escaped work, huh?
Thank you very much for
Welcome.
hosting the meeting. And thank you so much for allowing me in. And I apologize for being late. Yes, I had a last minute assignment and I apologize for that.
No
Yeah,
worries. We were just going over the work plan.
And all she had to do is just spin around in her chair and then just log in.
Oh no, we've been pretty busy at PT and there was no spinning around my chair.
All right, Han, I think we're done with that item unless anyone has questions.
Are there any questions? Thank you, commissioners. This is a great team, and thank you, Paul and Don, for giving up those, what do you call, time for other commissioners. And then you told Tony, say, oh, just let them choose first, and you plug me in wherever. That's a great team player. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 10. Council's report. Council.
Oh, perfect.
Perfect timing. So first and foremost, I do want to thank all of you for the work that you guys have done. Tony, for the work plans, I know that is mapping up differently as we move into this fiscal year. So excited to announce that I am continuing my role as your liaison. So that is an announcement in itself. We did get new assignments in our last meeting. And so I have been reassigned to this amazing group, which I absolutely love and adore. I think you guys are doing amazing work. And as COVID-19, as we move through that, we're going to see new challenges that are going to come through this commission. And so know that that work is really important. And the other, let's see, I know that we have had some updates from our prior chief and our current staff team who's here, just, trying to continue with the COVID testing. I know it's been canceled a couple times and some folks have been asking me why, and I'm sure you've already had the answer, but it's definitely staff, right? Our staff is being pulled in very different directions. And so unfortunately, many times our staff, we don't have the staffing, but know that we are working in collaboration with Santa Clara County to make sure that if folks need testing, that becomes available to them. And so we are just working really hard in Milpitas to continue this very unique program that not many other cities have. And I do want to thank our fire department and our police department. I know you guys have been really busy this week. In particular, we've had some incidents that have shaken our community. I know that the way that you guys have responded is not only being recognized in Milpitas, but it's also being talked to in other law enforcement agencies. And you guys are the best. And so know that it feels really good to be in a different place and just hear those conversations. And so Another thing that will be new for this commission that happened at our recent council meeting is we worked with our mayor to move life assignments to commissioners. And so before, I believe that there was a change to cap the time that a commissioner could be a service on a commission. That has changed back because many roles are not being filled. And so we want to make sure that if you like your job, you're doing a good job, that we give you the opportunity to stay and don't put those term limits. And so I believe that has been lifted. And with that, we are also adding a seat to each commission where it's going to be represented by a high school student. So we'll have an extra seat to this commission, and definitely, Tony, you'll probably be getting that information from Steve on how we're going to fill it. It'll be a regular application, but if you know any high school students who are in particular passionate about this area of work, please know that we're going to be able to have their voice at the table. So I'm really excited about what that's going to look. We're one of the first cities to implement that change. So I'm really proud of that. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and leave it to the floor if you guys have any particular questions, but that is my report from the last time we met.
Hey, any questions for Councilmember Dominguez?
No.
All right, moving on to the school district's report. I guess that's common. Okay, so MUSD conducted its first round of non-contact drive-through all staff COVID-19 testing. And we had 213 tests conducted with 208 negative, 1 positive, and the other 4 insufficient samples. On January 12 to 13, we facilitated a second round of testing through I think it's called the Curative. And 422 team members were tested with 2 positives and 6 insufficient samples. At MUSD, we're also talking about modifying the community hours for our students as a requirement to graduate. And on January 26th, at the board meeting, we will review the current completion data, the opportunity efforts, and the sample cases so that we can come up with the correct amount or the sufficient amount of hours as community hours for students as a requirement to graduate. This past Tuesday, we are back in school in person only for the study hubs, the pods, but all other students are still on distance learning. That's my report.
Thanks, Yvonne.
Thank you. OES report.
Okay, hang on one second. Okay, so last commission meeting, I had chatted with you guys about the MyShake app. There was a resident in the community who wanted us to publish on the city's webpage the link to the MyShake app. Did anyone have a chance to use it? What were your thoughts on it? You know, was it reliable? Was it significant? We just kind of want to get some feedback before we recommend it to the community. So I see lots of hands popping up. I'll start with Jonathan.
I'm sorry, Tony, I did not get an opportunity.
Oh, okay, no worries. Joe, your hand pops up.
Actually, yeah. Especially with recently, there was I believe it was a 4.5 earthquake down in Monterey County. So I was able to look at all the information that was there, kind of play around with it. It's actually, I find it's fairly easy to use. It's pretty user intuitive. It asks kind of the same questions like if you were to go in and to the USGS website and report you felt an earthquake, just, you know, was there any damage to, you know, the buildings or anything like that. So I think that would be a great asset to the citizens to be able to say, hey, I felt an earthquake at this time. No damage seen, or yes, there is damage. And I think it would be a great asset to better track, you know, when we do have earthquakes, especially from a standpoint where where we can focus our resources on, this area has significant damage, this area doesn't.
Okay. Did you find after Sunday's, Saturday evening's earthquake, did you find that it was pretty accurate and timely in its reporting? Okay.
Yeah. I think it's the information that they give and the accuracy and the timeliness is just as good as anything you get from any government website, whether it's Berkeley or USGS.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Berkeley. Well, USGS is about 5 minutes after it occurs.
Yeah,
that's the best they can do, and then they got to come back and visually look at it and say, is it legit versus pitching it, because it was kind of like, what happened there? There was nothing. Because I looked at it a little bit and I says, well, it's more informational, but it's not relevant to if we have an earthquake.
Okay.
You're going to know it.
Yeah.
When we have a significant earthquake, it's like you don't pull out your phone and say, well, did we have an earthquake? And wait 5 minutes. It's like,
yeah.
you know it. So it's kind of having information, and I've got the USGS already tapped in. I can set the threshold of when I get informed. So, and I kind of stick with that, but that's, good enough. And I get texted over that one.
Okay, thank you. Paul, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, I actually have another app installed as well. It's not the USGS app. I kind of like the UI on the app that I have installed a little bit better than the one on Berkeley. What I liked about the one from Berkeley, because it brings it closer to the CERT activity and the RACES Mike reports and things like that, is the fact that it gives individuals the opportunity to report on the strength that they felt where they were. And it uses the GPS on your phone to figure out where you are. So they can get a lot of data points to really point towards the epicenter and do a lot of correlation to try and figure out, where resources might be needed and things like that. So, for an early app, I didn't have any crashes with it. It was fairly clean. It didn't seem like it was as fast as the existing app that I have to respond to post an event, and the level of customization is kind of Spartan, but it's not bad. So so for an early on app, I think it's fine. I think the thing that's most valuable is the fact that individuals can report into the center at Berkeley on the magnitude that they experience. So sorry for that long rambling answer.
What I needed to hear. So I guess the only thing that I would have left to ask on this is then obviously anything that we put to our city's site is reflective of us. Can you guys, as users of it, can you come up with anything that would be any reason you would hesitate if it was your business that you were going to promote or put out there on your site? Would there be any reason you wouldn't want it linked to your site?
Well, let me ask you this. Are you doing it, by doing that, are you basically endorsing it, or are you just making the citizens of Milpitas aware of it? So if you're just doing that, then why wouldn't you pick out, the top 3, 4, 5 apps in the Google App Store that report on earthquake and say, here are 5 resources, this one has this particular advantage for us, and choose the one that you like best.
So as government agency, we can't promote private industry. This particular app is from Berkeley, University of Berkeley, which is why it's had the ability to be used, and then we link to, so like USGS, we would have a link to USGS. It would be taught or treated as the same thing as USGS would be, because it's a scientific based app. It's a government agency. So that's why we don't go private, or we don't get into the private sector of all the apps that are actually on the webs, the Apple stores, the Droid stores.
Okay. See, that's why you're in charge, because you have the right answers.
I'm in charge of nothing.
So, okay. So in light of that, I mean, I haven't seen anything on the app that I think would be a blight on the city of Milpitas if we said, you know, here's an app that you might want to take a look at.
Okay. Chief Maloon, as chief of OES, do you have any concerns?
No, I agreed with what Paul said. As long as it's not going to reflect poorly on the city,
Okay.
I would support it.
Very good. Okay. Moving on, my next topic I had was CERT program update. Okay, so I don't know if I've put anything out recently. Obviously, we're not doing CERT classes, but that's not new news. A lot of our, in fact, I'm glad we had PD on the phone or on the line with this one. So a handful of our CERT caches have been pillaged to the point that there's nothing left in them. Senate School, Burnett Elementary, Spangler. Those three have absolutely nothing in their caches. I had to send a fire crew to rescue what was left of one of them. We've had PD reports filled out. So as a result of this, I mean, I think those Wells cargo containers, that's the brand. I think they've lived their life. They were put in when, I don't know, George Washburn was in my role. So for those of you who know George, it's probably 20, they're probably 20 years old. They probably live their life at this point. And so I'm working on what I'm calling the Connex box project. I'm getting smaller Connex boxes, not the full double size. They're 8 by 10 approximately. They're going to actually have some new locations. So the Burnett one, I don't know the history of everything on why they were placed, where they were replaced. I mean, my understanding is they were put on the school campuses so that they could be looked after easily. There were constantly eyes on it, but clearly that's not a preventative measure anymore. So my thought is what the plan is at this point. I've been working with Renee Lorenzen, the director of Parks and Recreation. We're going to be moving some of them into the school, or excuse me, the park sites, because at this point, at least on city property, we have a little more control. And once I plunk down a Connex box filled with materials, there's no way that thing's going to be moved. Like these little trailers, we can dispose of those. It's not easy, but I can get it done. Once the Connex boxes are in place, it's not going to be an easy move if something changes within the school district, the city's relationship, and they want to move. So now that we'll move on our property, where we have a little bit more, they're just better available. And the other issue is the school district is going to be putting up high security fencing around all of the schools in the coming years, just because unfortunately that's the world we live in. And we didn't want the CERT supplies being locked behind security doors outside of normal business hours that couldn't be utilized in the event of a disaster. So there's multiple reasons why we're moving the locations, but the one at Burnett, which is on Kennedy, will now be in Cardoza Park on the east side of the park, on the east side parking lot. The one at Senate is going to move down to, I think it's called Senate Park. I lived on that street, but it's on Tahoe, Senate Park, Rocky Mountain, Tahoe, Butano. That one will be down at Senate Park. And then another one is going in. So Spangler School is kind of unique. Way back, apparently they had a concrete slab and a portable. They had a concrete slab poured, and a portable sat on it. It's right as you're passing the 7-Eleven and Mills Diner. There's a concrete slab laid out. It's actually school property, but they don't use it, and it's not going to be incorporated into their security fencing. So they told us we can set up on that. So they're about 8 by 10. I'm getting them stocked out with shelves in them. There'll be a lot more room in them. They'll be a lot better organized because we've got more space in them. We can get more materials in there. So it's kind of an ongoing lengthy process. And the fourth Connex box I'm going to purchase at this time is going to be put over somewhere in the Murphy Ranch Drive area over by Serrano Park. I really worry about that community out there. They're so isolated, and we have CERT teams out there, and we actually have a team there. We have enough people to have a team, but the problem is at this point, they would have to come into Spangler to participate in a team because they don't have any materials whatsoever. And really, in the event of a catastrophic earthquake, my concern is they're going to be landlocked over there, and they're not going to be able to come in and get resources as they need them. And depending on the fire crews are, when something like that happens, they might not have a fire engine that's over there with them either. So I want to get the last Connex box at this point in time put in over there and get it stocked. So it'll kind of go in phases. We have what will be now 9 CERT caches online total. The 4 new ones, plus the 5, I think, if I'm counting correctly, the 5 that are already on site and other sites, and they haven't been damaged, thankfully. And in time, I'll eventually replace those Connex boxes with Connex boxes as well. So.
And that kind of brings up one point that I think Paul and I probably would know more so, maybe Joe, is the using the FRS/GRMS radios. Once you step over into channel 9, your power has been reduced, which means you can't talk even, a block is about all you're going to get, at least with the higher mode power on the things that you can use now. You can get further. Channel 9 steps into this is the low power section. Okay, it's strictly flat across the board, from 9 to 14 is low power. Then when you step into 15, you go back up. So we may have to do some changing of how we number things, so it
Okay.
makes sense. It would,
Sorry, you're nerding on me, Don. I love you,
No,
but you're nerding on me.
what I'm saying is
I don't know what you're telling me.
okay, hang on. We number the channels to the team numbers. If we go to channel 9 on that one team, it's going to be just, if I can see you, I can talk to you. You step behind the building.
FRS? Are we talking
the FRS? Yeah.
I don't even really worry about the FRS radios anymore because they're not going to work. You got to stand on top of a building with no wind and no trees, and I'm not going to rely on those.
Do we have a cache of GMRS radios for the CERT teams, Tony? Or
no, those require a license.
Radios.
The GRMS requires a license, and I've got a license, but nobody else does. You have to have the license yourself. It's $85 for, it's $75 for 10 years.
Okay, so maybe that's something we can bring to the RACES group and see if individuals are interested in doing that, as they would be deployed along with the CERT teams.
Well,
if
Don,
that becomes
how many members right now in the CERT teams are licensed hams? Do we have any idea?
Probably about 6, 8 at the most. And of those, we probably have 6 that are active. We probably have closer to maybe 10 or 12 that are ham radio operators, but they're not active. They're not active in either RACES or CERT.
Okay.
Yeah, because the GRMS is, we can't cross license to those things. We can't use it. Right. You have to be licensed for that, and you have to be licensed for this. That's independent. So.
Okay, well, maybe we can agendize that with the next RACES meeting, Paul, and you and I can chat about that to see if that's something we can somehow overcome being an issue. I'm not overly concerned about the RACES, the FRS radios. If they work, they work great. If they don't, they don't. At this point, what I've learned about the technology of them, they're not very good. So I'm not.
Just such low power, transmission power that it's line of sight, and you get any kind of terrain or trees in the way, you're up a creek. So
or a building.
That's why we stopped deploying them. I don't even deploy them anymore. There's a cache of them inside a cache. There's a supply inside each of the caches where people can take them, and if they're working, cool. But they're so expensive at this point, and they're not reliable, but I don't put them out any longer.
Yeah.
So Tony, we can spend time on this at another time, but we've got the quarterly RACES meeting coming up the first Thursday in February. I think we probably have at least one RACES person for each cache, but I'll put out a poll to verify that. And then so that we can move on, just one other comment real quick.
I think we should.
I go by the Pomeroy cache probably, maybe not once a week, but every 10 days to 2 weeks. And there's never been any tampering issues there. And one of the things that I attribute that to, and I hope I don't jinx this by saying this, is that, it's basically visible from the street. And there are residences, there are homes right across from where it is. So I think that might discourage somewhat somebody from breaking into it for fear of being seen, whereas some of the ones that have been broken into are kind of remote. But
We're
starting with that.
Senate and Spangler are both in that mode. They got to park across the street or a walled area where the homes can't see them.
So
for sure.
Chief Hernandez, if I reach out to you offline, and maybe get you the locations, because I know you guys have a lot of new staff. I don't recognize many of them anymore. If I get you addresses of them, could I request extra patrol checks on those?
Absolutely. After, I think the
Thank you.
schools, the ones that were at the school sites, it was about a month ago that they were broken into.
Yeah.
Maybe about a month and a half. So we've been
Yeah.
doing patrol checks already, but it will be
Awesome. Thank you.
important for us to know where they're at.
Okay. I'll send over updated information, even just with the current ones that are in place, just because I know there's a lot of new officers that probably don't know exactly what I'm talking about. So, okay. Without
We
any
can
questions,
agendize this item for the next meeting.
Okay.
Discuss further in detail. But, you know, as members of the emergency preparedness team, on Monday, we have that Monday night, the strong wind. My
Yep.
power transformer in the backyard blew up, sent sparks flying. And it cost 168 households without electricity for 3 days. So I had to knock on doors and tell them to be very careful. Number one, this is the time when break-ins happen. If everybody leaves the house because of no electricity, I say leave the flashlights on. Don't use the candles if you're leaving the house. Flashlights are okay. And so by the third day, we had the transformer replaced by PG&E, and we just had our power back on yesterday. So this is the time, in cases like this, we can reach out and help our neighbors. And now I know to send message to our chief to do the extra patrolling on those homes. Thank you.
okay. Moving on, just because we got a lot still going on the agenda. Lastly, I have the discussion on the emergency operations plan. So quick backstory to it. It was last done in 2013, needs to be updated every 5 years. So we're running a little bit behind the schedule on this one, but really what we needed to do, the document itself is in draft form and it's theoretically done, but we also want to include information from the community. We want to bring in stakeholders from the community to bring input to the document itself. So I had sent it out, or I sent a link because it's a massive document. I sent a link to everybody to kind of go through it and provide feedback to me. We don't need to necessarily go through all the feedback here unless there's something someone wants to discuss, because it can become a very lengthy topic. It could be a meeting all on its own. And if we need to do that, that's what we can do. The plan is also to, though, reach out into the business community, the church, the faith-based, community-based organizations, bring them together, set up a meeting. In fact, the information is going out to the people I'm coordinating with tomorrow, to then start shooting it out so we can get a meeting set up in the next couple of weeks for the communities, the businesses, the faith-based, the community-based, the I keep calling them social clubs. They're not social clubs. Kiwanis and the Rotary. For those groups to come in and provide input to us, because we want it to really take a whole community approach to make sure that there's nothing left out. Language disparities, physical disability disparities, all of those things are taken into consideration. What's our community made up of, and what do we need to make sure we're prepared to address for, or at least what information can we give that person to prepare themselves, because clearly we're outnumbered in a disaster. So, and is there specific feedback or anything you guys want to talk about at this time? Or Chief Maloon, I saw you perk up a little bit. I didn't know if you wanted to add on to that.
I think it's about a 300-page document of edge of your seat reading. So it might take them a little while to get through the document. But thanks for all your work on that, Tony.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's 89 pages, and there's redundancy in there and things of that nature, and stuff that we kind of go off into terms which, if they don't understand, like the ICS system or something like that, they don't understand some of the why things work the way they do and stuff like that.
Just to keep in mind the audience on this, and I'm taking that point in, Dawn, but it is relevant in terms of the audience. So the audience would be city staff members that are reporting into the EOC. And the idea behind it is so that all city staff has an understanding of how we operate. We want the feedback from you guys, so we make sure that those boxes that need to be checked that fit our community, that we set up the resources for those. But it's a working document for the city staff in response. Now, I do want you guys to understand that the document itself is very thick and dense, and I want to call it interesting, but it's not. But what will be very interesting about the document is we'll be putting together a set of annexes, and that will speak to the specifics of, in the event of an earthquake, this is what we do, setting up a disaster center or a shelter or a volunteer center. Like, it'll have all these real workable documents that are quick reads, that if you just got dropped in the position, you could read it, understand why you're there, what you're doing, and what is expected of you. Those will really be the working pieces for our staff. The EOP itself is a very dense piece that will get updated every 5 years, but these annexes float attached to it, but freely, so that we can adapt and adopt. We can adapt to them as we need to, as we go through events and we figure this doesn't work, we need to change it, without having to go back to council for this entire document to be blessed again. So just keep that in mind when you're doing your review on it.
Yeah,
I think that's a great idea, Tony, because what we, just to throw this out here, what we used to do at the biotech company that I worked at was we used to have the person that was in charge of the lab review the annex to the specific threat, because like for chemistry and biology, it was, you have to look out for two different things, but they had a review process where they'd look at that every year, and then the annex was just refreshed.
Yeah, and I think what he was saying, what John was saying there, was it's more relevant to think of what you're in, your system, your structure, whatever it is that you're kind of part of. And then kind of in view of that, you look at this document, those parts, as to if something has changed, what do I need to look at to make sure that the document is still relevant to, type of thing. Have we moved something out, put something else in place of it? Is that got some different hazards or things of that nature that might be relevant to that really don't exist in the document, or that sort of thing? And I think that would be kind of a help, is give them a little bit of a roadmap into this document as to what would be relevant to your department versus your department, kind of thing. Versus them looking at this thing and going, go ahead.
Yeah, just one thing I remember is, like, every time there'd be a radioactive isotope that was added on site, there had to be, that triggered a review. And so, but I mean, not everybody had to review it. It was just the labs that had radioactive isotopes. If you didn't have a radioactive isotope that you were dealing with, then you really didn't need to be part of it.
So ideally, it's kind of like the Cliff Notes version. The annexes will serve as Cliff Notes version, so anyone that gets plopped into that position in a disaster can read through it real quick and figure out what they're doing, what their intent is. Right. And then the larger document itself will just serve as kind of like the housing Bible, I call it. If any of you need it, I put the copy on the drive a couple of weeks back, and you guys have had access to it. If you can't pull it up for any reason, let me know. I dropped a hard drive off of it over to Han just recently. I can bring you guys a hard drive if you want it printed, because I personally don't like reading through hundreds of pages on computer. I can get it printed and deliver it to you. So please just reach out to me if there's a format that you guys would prefer having it in.
Well, which version have I got? Because this is off of Microsoft Teams.
Yeah, that's a Teams version. So I can print it, or if you can't get it because someone else was having issues getting it, I dropped a USB drive with it off at their house. So
yeah, because I'm seeing 89 pages, so it's still thick.
Mm-hmm.
So Tony, I just want to make a real quick comment so we can move on. I thought it was a great piece of work. It struck me as being sort of a ICS tutorial, NIMS framework overview and that sort of thing. So I'm going to be anxious to see the annexes, because I think that's where the executable things come into play. But yeah, I applaud you pulling this together and updating it. I see you still have hair, but I'm not sure why.
Okay.
Deep roots.
Just so we're clear on the process, the EOP will be adopted as a standalone document with whatever annexes have made it through draft review. Right now, we have a continuity of operations plan as an annex, and we have
The
Tony
PSPS.
has- we have the PSPS annex. We have the pandemic response plan annex, and we have a draft. I think it's about 3/4 of the way done that Tony has written on the heat and cold emergencies, so
Extreme weather.
extreme weather emergencies. So the earthquake annex will be forthcoming, but the EOP would be adopted by council at some point as a standalone document. And Don, I'm not sure what version you're looking at, but 89 pages doesn't sound right to me.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
it was over 300.
Yeah.
No, the version that's on the team room, and I printed it out, so I had a fresh copy just the other day, is 80 pages.
That's interesting.
That's the
What
same
do,
way-
what do you have, Han? Did you
Turn
get
over
your
300.
That's
I
what I
turn over
thought. Okay,
300.
maybe I'm having issues transferring it over to Teams because it is such a large document. You know what? I'll just make USB drives for everybody and I'll drop it off to you guys.
I think that would be wise instead of
Yeah.
just printing it out.
Okay, yeah, I think there was like 324 pages. I was like, there was a lot more work than 89.
Oh, here I was proud of myself because I read it cover to cover, and now I only find I only read a third of it.
You have another 220 pages to go, Paul.
Yeah,
More
and
riveting
so-
information, everyone. Stand by.
All right.
Oh, wait a minute. This thing
So-
does interesting things as I'm keep pulling down on it and it keeps saying, oh, we're going to read in more.
You didn't wait long enough.
No, I've had it on here for a while.
Even your
It's just,
computer's bored with it.
So the
Yes,
only
you-
thing that I would suggest is that as the annexes are ready to be consumed by mere mortals like us, that the sooner we can hot link to those in the existing document, the better, so that, you know, the next time we have to read something, we don't have to read 600 pages all at once. So,
Yeah.
but I understand they're works in progress.
Yeah.
So I have a
Alright.
question, Tony.
Yeah.
For you and Chief Maloon. Does the EOP also take into account, does it discuss some of the mutual aid agreements the city has with surrounding agencies like San Jose, Fremont, County Fire, and other emergency first responding agencies?
Yeah, it does go over that their mutual aid agreements do exist, the master mutual aid agreements and the EMA, which is like the emergency management agreements as well. But it talks about them very on a, I hate the term high level, but it talks about them, just kind of glazes over that these things are in place and they exist. It doesn't go into detail about them because obviously if someone wanted to know more, they could pull them, but they're acknowledged, yes.
Okay. It just kind of just says, hey, we have them here, and that's it.
Mhm. They exist, yeah. Okay. All right,
Councilmember Dominguez has her hand up too, Tony.
Oh, yes. Okay. Sorry, I can't see hands, everyone.
No worries. Thank you so much, Chief, for that. My only question, and this is, if I could have a copy of the document too, I haven't had a chance to look into it. But going back on Han's comments, and I also was without electricity for 3 days, so it's been hard. But I'm still, I think one of the things, I don't know if it might be in this document, but I know it's come up in council a couple of times, is the communication plan and how are we using the applications that are out there. For example, this week we had a small earthquake and we had the windstorm. And so I do feel that we should have had some sort of alert. I'm just not too sure. I know that there's some challenges of who is putting the message on what platform. Is it county? Is it PG&E? Is it us? And so I do think we need to really take a look at that. And if maybe that could be part of an annex in the communication plan of this draft, I would greatly appreciate it, because I do believe that it's time for us to just take a look at what are the systems that are being used, and just to mainstream that process, because many people rely on those messages for emergencies. I know that I think I'm sure many of us have at least 10 different apps that we're getting information from, but I really would like to have a mainstream of what does Milpitas do with these applications, who handles the language of the text that goes out, and at the end, who pushes the button? I know that has been a big question. And so however I could be of assistance with the county, please let me know, because I think it's time for us to put that in a document. And yeah, because it's been at least 2 years now that I know we've had the conversation. So I think it would be great if we could add it in there.
The communications annex actually will be one of the first ones. The only reason the other ones went into place at this point is because it was literally the pandemic. It was literally the PSPS. But actually, the communications one was the first priority one to get done. So yeah, as soon as we can get through this draft, that'll be the next priority on the list. It was the first one listed. The other ones have been drafted because we've been living them and creating as we go.
The interesting thing is PG&E said absolutely nothing on the 18th. They had Southern California was the only thing that was in the warning area. Because the thing is high winds are an issue, because it doesn't take some of the other things. It's the high winds can blow down the power lines and such. And they said nothing.
Yeah, they didn't go into a PSPS. Those power outages that we had, unfortunately, were incident driven. They weren't planned. So it was a result of infrastructure damage happening, which is always going to be, it's always been a problem and always will be a problem. It's a whole nother lengthy conversation to get into all of that. PG&E's been sort of slapped on the hand because of the way they handled the first year of PSPS shutdowns. They were pulling the trigger on it all the time and everyone got mad. You can't do that to us. Now they've pulled back their use of that trigger, the shutdown abilities. And then damage happens. It's something we've always had. It seems so much more inconvenient now than it was previously because we weren't reliant to work from home. So yeah, again, that's a long, lengthy topic to get into that I don't want to have here. But unless there's other questions, I think we're good to move on to fire reports. I don't want to keep everybody here tonight.
I do have one small update for OES, Tony.
Oh yes, please.
It's more of an announcement. So Tony just received, I think yesterday or today.
Today, actually.
Her certified emergency manager designation, which for everybody you don't know, is hundreds of hours of training, a year of effort, and it's a very significant accomplishment and something that she should be very proud of.
Thank you, Chief.
Awesome.
Congratulations, Tony.
Congratulations.
My
Awesome.
friend, thank you guys. My friend told me she was going to make me a cape to start wearing to work.
with the red diamond and the S in
something
it.
like that. Yeah. Yeah, I think in Santa Clara County, of like all the cities have their emergency managers and whatnot. I think in all of Santa Clara County, I can only think of 2 other ones, I think. So there's not many of us, and it's an international recognition. So I could essentially deploy to any other country in the world if they had a disaster because I met certain criteria. So yeah, it's kind of a big deal.
So you get to do foreign travel now.
Yeah, when that budget comes back. FEMA would be loading that one up. Thank you, Chief Malone.
You bet.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Congratulations again. All right, moving on to fire report.
Fire report. Okay. I have a couple of quick things. The testing site at the library was closed by the county effective today. It came to our attention that they had actually only been testing about 10 to 15 people per day anyway. They at one time had increased their testing capacity to include the public, general public, and then they did not tell us, despite the fact that the city was supporting them with personnel, that they had stopped testing the general public and they were back to testing only Valley Health people by appointment only. So they were down to about 15 people a day. So not a huge loss in testing capacity for the city there. Renee reached out to the county. We've been hosting pop-up testing that can test up to 750 people each day that they test. We've been hosting that twice monthly. Renee was also able to secure their mobile testing for 2 days per week through the end of February, I believe, at this time. So, and that will include every Saturday. So people will now be able to get tested on Saturdays as well. And on policies for the fire department has begun to implement a service called Lexipol, which is an online program that basically gives you a template for all policies that has been vetted through multiple levels of legal review and compliance review. And it takes the guesswork out of compliance and also helps to reduce the liability for the city. We have implemented, I think, our first 20 policies of an anticipated approximately 200 total. So they give you the template, which gives you all the basics that you have to make sure that you meet the criteria. And then beyond that, you're able to add and customize to fit your specific needs in your city. So that's an ongoing process, and we anticipate having that completed in about 6 to 12 months. So more to follow on that. And that's really all I have for fire.
I think, Chief, were you going to do a vaccination update as well?
Oh yeah, vaccinations. I'm sorry.
Kind of a big deal.
Yeah. It's kind of a big deal. So fire has, we've recently deployed 2 paramedics to Southern California to assist them through the Master Mutual Aid Agreement with the state, California OES. Similar to what we do with wildland fire deployments, we deployed them under that agreement. It's fully reimbursable to the city. In fact, we actually make a little bit of money on it because we get a 10% administrative fee. So all the costs are covered for them, all their overtime and their accommodations, their food, and they are supposed to return tomorrow. And they've been there for now, this is their 15th day. And when they return tomorrow, then they'll be quarantined for 10 days and then they'll be back to work. And their quarantine time off is also covered by the agreement. So we are trying to secure that same agreement with Cal OES for Santa Clara County. We've already been assisting in the efforts with the fire departments, all of the fire departments in the county, and now we finally teamed up with PD once we were able to secure vaccines for the police officers in the county, law enforcement, and the corrections officers. So we are staffing at the fairgrounds a public safety vaccine clinic, and that has been ongoing for about a month now. We started PD late last week for the corrections officers. And then this week, I think Chief Hernandez, you guys started on Monday, is that correct?
I think we actually started the week before. So we'll be done with all of our staff probably next week.
Okay. All right, perfect. So the premise for the supplemental staffing for county public health by the fire departments is that the more people that we can get vaccinated in the early phases and the early tiers, and the faster we can get that done, the faster we can move into the general public. So we anticipate to continue supporting that effort. And right now, we anticipate tomorrow knowing whether or not that'll be fully reimbursed by the state under the CFAA agreement through Cal OES. So more to follow on that, but that's my update right now on vaccines. I know that we are in tier 1B as we moved into the PD, and they continue to expand. There was a little bit of a bottleneck with the supply of vaccines, but they seem to have resolved that. And then they did approve today the Moderna vaccines, about 380,000 of them, I think, statewide had been taken out of the rotation, and that was approved again today to go back into the rotation, which freed up some additional vaccines. So that's a Monday through Friday effort for us. We do have people down there every day administering the vaccines, and we'll continue to do that. And that's what I know right now. I anticipate moving into additional tiers and phases, probably going to start moving into other essential workers, I think teachers and grocery workers, food service workers, things like that. I think they said about 2 weeks out. Any questions on the vaccines?
Chief, I have a question.
Yeah.
In terms of for department-wise, for PD and fire, does that include civilian staff as well?
So it doesn't yet. It does include dispatchers. So records clerks and things like that were specifically excluded right now. And that's there. It's an extremely political issue. And when you start to allow people that wouldn't otherwise be in a specific tier as you move through the phases, it can get pretty sticky. So, but I anticipate that they'll probably move into those people, maybe in that tier 1C when we move into the grocery workers. So, but I don't know that for sure. Chief Hernandez, have you heard anything about your records clerks?
Yeah, so the only non-sworn employees that were included is our community service officers. And what they used as the guide was people that had contact with the public. And so our records clerks rarely do. We have workarounds around it, but our CSOs are still engaged with people's property and all these different things. So our CSOs are included, our dispatchers are included, and our police officers are included.
Perfect. Yes, that was what I was just making sure that those who have people contact, which includes the CSOs, I wanted to make sure that they were getting. So thank you so much for that and making sure that they're getting vaccinated as well. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and we were also able to secure vaccines in Tier 1A for the recreation and community services personnel that have been staffing the testing sites. So the library and the city's mobile testing, because they're right out in front. They're in constant patient contact with multiple people every day.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the updates and the report, Chief.
End of report.
Thank you. Okay, I'm moving on to law report.
Okay, so I'll start that off. First of all, good evening, Councilmember Dominguez, Commission Chair Lynn, and Commissioners. I'm Jared Hernandez, currently serving as the Acting Chief of Police. I'm really excited to be here tonight with Tyler Jamison, one of our lieutenants, and we're going to be presenting a new remote restraint technology that we intend on deploying in a couple months. Back on September 15th, Lieutenant Matt Miller presented the use of force policy as well as the de-escalation policy to the Commission. And along the lines of use of force and de-escalation, I believe the use of this new remote restraint technology is going to help decrease the numbers of times that our officers will need to use force, and it will also aid us in supporting our efforts in de-escalation. At the September meeting, I mentioned that I felt it was extremely important that the police department maintain a service model that's aligned with the community's expectations and values. And I think that an important piece in ensuring that we meet that goal is to get feedback from the Commission. Our objective tonight is really just to introduce you to the technology, how we envision using the technology, and then also in turn getting feedback from the Commission, not just on the technology itself, but also on the draft policy that I think you guys probably already received. So with that said, I'd like to introduce Lieutenant Tyler Jamison to run us through his presentation.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm gonna actually share my screen right now. Let me set this up real quick. All right, move this off to the side. Thank you, Chair Hahn, Vice Chair Paul, Commissioners, for allowing us to do this presentation tonight. Councilmember Dominguez, thank you for your continued support. Like the Chief was saying, what we're presenting tonight, we're really glad you guys are able to see this because we do think that it's a great resource. As the Chief mentioned, we are planning hopefully on rolling this out within the next couple of months. Right now, I think March is probably our goal for several officers to get trained on this resource and have it out on the streets. So tonight we're going to be discussing a new policy on the remote restraint device. We currently have a drafted policy based on the best practices and industry standards. which is going to be found in our Milpitas Policy Manual 305. The decision to present this policy, like the chief was saying, was based on a continued effort to identify different de-escalation techniques, tools, and solutions to assist our officers and protect the community when dealing with those suffering during a crisis, so that those situations are less likely to lead to a physical confrontation or a forceful encounter. And as part of an ongoing effort to promote transparency and maintain our community's confidence in how we operate as an organization, we're obviously here today to discuss that policy, introduce the resource, and get your guys' feedback. So feel free to ask any questions at any time, and then we'll also take questions and feedback at the end as well. All right, so the first question everybody's probably wondering is, what exactly is a remote restraint device? And that's specifically addressed in NPM section 305.2. The BolaWrap device is a crisis intervention tool used to restrict and temporarily impede the mobility of a subject. It does not rely on any pain compliance techniques like the batons, the tasers, or a chemical agent spray. And it actually creates more opportunity for officers to de-escalate a situation without having to use force when dealing with non-compliant or violent subjects. We do believe that this tool is a great complement or complements several trainings that officers receive annually and will help reduce the number of physical confrontations. Officers currently receive de-escalation training such as tactical communication, crisis intervention training, and other modern forms of communication-based training to assist with these situations. Next slide. So this next slide is an overview of the BolaWrap, and it shows exactly how it was designed to work. So the BolaWrap is a projectile that basically deploys a tether cord around the subject's arms, legs, and their lower extremities, which immediately restricts the subject's movement and allows officers to coordinate a safe approach to take that subject into custody. So you can see from that top picture right there how the tether cord wraps just below the subject's elbows and just below the subject's knees. And that allows, when multiple officers are on scene, to make a safe approach, place that individual into handcuffs without turning the situation into a physical confrontation. All right, so situations where the BolaWrap may be useful, that's specifically addressed in our policy manual 305.6.1. The BolaWrap's intended for someone that's non-compliant or someone who presents a risk to the officers or the public if we were to immediately approach that person. So for example, officers are often responding to calls for service when they're dealing with passively resistant, aggressive, or non-compliant subjects who are refusing to follow officers' lawful orders. And if that officer were to try and take that subject into custody, if they were to approach that subject, that situation might turn into a physical confrontation. With the BolaWrap, it allows you to stay a safe distance away, usually about 10 to 25 feet. And the BolaWrap is basically going to give us an additional tool to safely handle those situations. You can see from the list that subjects under the influence of alcohol and drugs who aren't complying with officers' commands, an armed subject, not firearm related, but if a subject's holding a large tool, a knife, and they have it down by their side, they're being non-assaultive, but they're being also non-compliant, the BolaWrap would be a great tool to use in that situation. Persons posing a danger to themselves, suicidal subjects, again, a lot of times if you make contact with that individual immediately, it could turn into a physical confrontation, and this would allow us to avoid those situations. All right, so is the BolaWrap dangerous? So similar to handcuffs, the BolaWrap will restrict movement of a subject's legs and arms, but it does not inflict any pain. If a subject is not wearing clothing, the BolaWrap can still wrap around the subject. There are small hooks at the end of the tether, but that may penetrate the skin, but it does not cause any significant injury. In fact, we actually tested the device multiple times. We had the manufacturer Wrap Technologies come out, and there weren't any instances where an officer sustained an injury from the small hooks penetrating the skin, because we actually used our officers for the demo. And we used it multiple times on them. Nobody was injured from those tethers and those hooks. If one of the main concerns, if for some unforeseen reason a subject is actively resisting with officers and they were to move where the tether wraps around the subject's neck, there isn't enough constriction in that device to hinder any type of breathing or airway. And that was probably one of our biggest concerns when we had the demo come out, and that was immediately addressed. They did the demonstration, and there's no issues with that whatsoever. On that BOLA wrap device, there's also a green line laser that provides precise accuracy, and the officers are going to be specifically trained to not deploy above the elbow area of the subject. So, all right. So the following video, it's just over a minute long, and it captured a successful deployment of the BOLA wrap on body cam footage last year in Minnesota. So when you're watching this video, just keep in mind that our officers are specifically trained in de-escalation techniques in order to calm someone down. So they're going to use those tools first before they even go to this BOLA wrap device. And so when you watch this video, there may have been some better ways for this officer to handle the situation, but the main reason of the video is to show the device's success. So this video, it's from the Virginia Police Department, which is actually in Minnesota, from an incident that occurred last year. And the officers were responding to a subject who was actually placed on a mental health hold. And that subject managed to escape the facility during a transport. The subject ended up in this shopping center, and this is where the officers made their initial contact. So I'm just going to play the video for you guys. The audio should be on.
Sit down. You're going to get BOLA wrapped if you don't sit down. Sit down right now. Oh. Sit down or you're going to get BOLA. Sit down. BOLA, BOLA, BOLA. No, we BOLA'd him. If it will it go? I don't know. Correction, BOLA wrap. Cut this thing. Yeah. That's perfect.
So you can see that the officers on scene were able to deploy the BOLA wrap, safely restrain the subject without that situation resorting to any higher levels of force. And that subject was then transported back to a hospital for further evaluation. So there are several deployment considerations that have been addressed within our policy manual on the use of BOLA wrap on certain individuals, and that is specifically addressed in section 305.6.2 of our policy. Officers will be trained to avoid these situations unless there are other underlying circumstances indicating other options would be ineffective. So individuals who are known to be pregnant, elderly individuals, or obvious juveniles, we're going to avoid those situations unless there are some absolute mitigating circumstances where other options aren't available. Individuals who are handcuffed or otherwise restrained in the back of a police vehicle, there's going to really be no need for the BOLA wrap because they're already going to be restrained. The next one, individuals in a confined space. So for example, if we're responding to a call for service and we're having to deal with someone in their house and they're in a hallway, the BOLA wrap's not going to be an effective tool because that tether deploys about 8 feet wide. So it would lose its trajectory. Individuals near any body of water that may present a drowning risk. So you're talking about near the hidden lake, or individuals who are in a position that may result in collateral damage. So if they're on a staircase, somewhere up high on a building, officers are absolutely going to avoid those situations so that there is no collateral injury associated with that. So this new policy and resource is basically a continued effort to find proactive ways to de-escalate crisis situations. It is in line with the best practices, and you saw from that video a successful deployment which allowed officers to safely take someone into custody without immediately resorting to any type of force. Our goal, it's always going to be to balance the safety needs of the public, the safety needs of our department members, and to safely take people into custody when necessary, and to provide them with the resources needed to get them help. This tool also complements the different resources and training we have available in our organization to assist us with those suffering a crisis. Like we mentioned before, the crisis intervention, the de-escalation, We're also implementing ICAT training, which is integrating communications, assessment, and tactics. It's another form of communication-based training that gives officers additional tools to deal with those situations. So we just want to thank you for the opportunity to present this policy and to introduce you this resource. And I'm going to open the floor to any questions or comments, feedback that someone might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
So I'm sorry, Han, go ahead.
Well, I just have two questions. The first question I had, I think I just saw that on the last slides, the distance between an officer and the suspect for the accuracy. Is that 8 foot, you said?
So according to the manufacturer, and then we tested the device when they came out here, that it is best useful from ranges of 10 to 25 feet. So that being said, the officer can be anywhere from 10 to 25 feet and the device will still be effective. Once you start getting too far away, it's not going to wrap around properly. And then obviously if you're in close quarters within that 10-foot radius, then you may have to go to a different resource.
Okay. And does that apply to a running or a moving suspect?
So this is more for those static situations where the subject's just standing there. It's not going to be as effective if the subject's running. Obviously, if they're running on some type of pavement or sidewalk, those are, again, going to be situations that officers avoid. If they are in a grassy field, it is possible to still use the device, but these are really specific for static situations, like you saw in the video where we're just trying to de-escalate those situations.
Okay. Thank you. Paul?
Just to add.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Is it okay just to add here? So if people are walking away slowly, there can be some movement. If they're pacing back and forth, it is effective in those situations. It can be used on somebody that's running away. But for us, the concern would be accuracy because the officer would probably also have to be running alongside of them to make that happen. And then we're also concerned if there was a tripping hazard, what would the collateral injury be? So we could use it, but we don't intend on using it in that way.
Yes, and that was one of my next question. If you said that, yes, that does apply on a running suspect. Because if you wrap, you say bola bola, you wrap the person and then that person fall flat on the face on the ground. So what would be the damage to us?
Right. And it's equally a risk too with the taser, for example. If you were to tase a person that was running and had an involuntary motion where their muscles would stop working, they could potentially fall as well. And so our officers take those things into consideration anytime they're going to deploy some tactic, whether it be a use of force or whether it be a remote restraint device. That's going to be built into our training, and that's going to be part of the curriculum.
Thank you. All right, Paul. Sorry, Paul.
That's okay. So thankfully, in the day of the internet, I was able to watch some YouTube videos that the manufacturer posted on the device and use and deployment. But my real question is, my understanding is the San Mateo Sheriff's Department has been using this device for a while now. What's their experience been when you talk with them?
So I know in speaking with San Mateo, and we actually spoke with multiple agencies all through the Bay Area and even in Southern California, depending on how their policy is, some agencies don't have as many deployments as other agencies. But I know with the few agencies that have had it, they like it very much because it obviously de-escalates a situation and presents a safer option for officers.
Yeah, in one respect too is that one young man back earlier last year, that would have probably just about been a perfect fit for that one. This is that one young man that was 5150.
Yeah, I think you're referring to our officer-involved shooting.
Yeah.
We were in the infant stages of reviewing this device back then. We had actually seen it. Chief Corpus and I went to the International Associations of Chiefs of Police conference, and it was one of the products that was there. And after talking to the representatives there, we came back and assigned it to staff, and we knew that it would be a good device for us. You know, in hindsight, it probably could have benefited us in that situation. It would be the ideal scenario to try it in. And honestly, we may have had a different outcome. And that's what I think is really propelling us to get this this tested, which we've done, get it with you guys and make sure we have all the feedback so we can put it out in the field, because we don't want to experience a situation like that. The last thing that we want to do is use force. And just the design of this product where you're able to take somebody safely into custody, even if they don't want to be, without having to go hands-on with them, without having to put your officers at risk, and without having to put them at risk. It's just a tremendous benefit.
Yeah. Like I said, that situation, because I see the body cam footage on that, and it's like, man, if they would have had that for that one, that would have probably been the best outcome on that one.
I agree.
Okay, so not to second guess, and I'm sure the training will be more than sufficient, but I guess one of the concerns that I would have with this is that if a single officer were on site, and assuming they already had the BOLO device out, because if an officer had to draw the device, somebody that's 10 feet away is going to close that 10 feet before you have it out, unless you're really, really fast. So unless there are two officers present where one might have a more lethal form of force at hand, whether it be a taser or a firearm, if you had an officer that had the BOLO device out and he or she was by herself, and that situation turned violent very quickly, I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think most officers could transition away from the BOLO device and draw a firearm in the 3 or 4 seconds that would take to close 10 feet. So, how do we train for that?
So I think in those situations, I mean, we're talking if an officer is within 10 feet of a subject and that subject's attempting to close the difference or the distance, the situation is going to require an officer to either go hands-on or go to an intermediate weapon. This device, it's more for those static situations on those passively resistant or non-compliant subjects who, like you saw in the video, are just, they're standing there, they're not listening to the officer's commands. I think at that point, an officer can continue to speak with the subject, try to de-escalate it through communication, and then hope that their other officer gets on scene where they can actually deploy 2 separate BOLO wraps, possibly on the elbows and the legs, to safely take that person into custody.
Yeah, I even think they recommended 2 people anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of their recommendation.
Right.
Without getting too much into police tactics, I mean, we do have a concept called contact cover, which means that you have an officer, you have your primary officer that's dealing with whatever the situation is, and then your cover officer is like the peripheral person. And if you take it in the concept of contact cover, you would have your primary officer available to react to whatever it is, and then your contact officer would kind of be your less lethal person, whether it be a remote restraint device or a taser or some other less lethal form of force.
Yeah.
Look, I just can I just say that it looks like this could be used possibly for someone too that's trying to close that reactionary gap, and maybe if they do have a knife at their side, just the fact that it wraps around, they'll drop it, and that's going to open up a lot more options for police officers.
Right, and those situations are kind of the ones that we were looking at when we were developing our policy. Obviously, if they drop it and then we get that device wrapped around their arms and legs, it'll allow officers to move safely in there and take that subject into custody.
Yeah, because that 10 to 15 feet, that's going to pretty much, if the person's going to decide to, whether they have like a knife or a screwdriver or something, if they're going to turn and do something, that's kind of the area where you'd want to make that decision, and be right there to be able to use that. But again, if it gets them to drop it, if it gets them to just say, oh boy, I surrender or something, it's going to really be beneficial from that perspective.
Right, and one of the things that the manufacturer even mentioned, you could see from that video just the sound of the BOLA wrap. Maybe if the officer deploys it and it doesn't wrap properly, that still might be a shock factor to the individual to drop whatever they have on them, or for officers to then gain compliance on that person. Any other comments or feedback regarding our policy?
What kind of special training are officers going to be required to go through before they can carry the remote restraint device?
So when we just received the devices a few weeks ago, and at the same time the manufacturer came out and they did an instructor level certification where multiple officers in our department were trained as instructors. So they went through that course, and so now it'll be those instructors' responsibility to train all the officers within our department. So they will be receiving several hours of training, both on the device itself, the policy regarding it, and they'll do multiple deployments so that they get familiar with the device.
And we're also going to incorporate some scenario-based training as well, because it's going to be a new tool for them. So we're going to put them in situations where they're going to have to decide on what use of force, and we could change the scenario based on how they're acting and make sure that it's in their mind that this is a tool available to them. And then also it's going to help us test that they're using it in those appropriate times, kind of like what Paul mentioned, making sure that what they're deploying matches the threat level of the situation that they're in. And the last thing too that I'll mention, it looks like there's not really any more questions, but the last thing that I think is important, besides all the benefits that we've already talked about, is that it's use of forces that often turn into civil liability situations for the city. And because this doesn't rely on pain, and because it is effective, I see it as another option to reduce civil liability and claims against the city, which I think is equally as important as all the other benefits that we've already talked about.
Yeah. Hey, one real quick last question. Will community service officers be trained with this device?
No, because if an officer is responding to that level of call, our community service officers aren't going to be responding with them to those calls.
Yeah, but all they get is pepper spray.
Yeah, our community service officers do carry handcuffs. It's not because we ask them to go arrest people, but they could be at a scene assisting, doing something. There might be a scenario where an officer needs extra handcuffs, and we just saw it as a way to have extra pieces of equipment out on the streets. If we had some, significant incident and an officer needed additional handcuffs for a scenario, they can meet that community service officer somewhere and they can hand off the handcuffs, and we can just have those resources available. But our community service officers, they are trained in some self-defense, but there is no expectation or desire to have them doing any type of enforcement action.
They're more passive than they are aggressive.
Right.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you guys very much for allowing us to present that.
Yeah, we appreciate your time and thank you for having us. It's always a pleasure being here. I know we've been here a few times now over the last couple of years, and your feedback's always valuable to us, and we always take it into consideration. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and we don't mean to hold you hostage till the very end. We'll have to start drawing straws in the future.
I enjoyed watching the vicious fight to take over for the chair position, and congratulations on Miss Lynn for winning that battle.
It happens every year.
It was entertaining.
Here, you take it. No, you take it.
No. I couldn't do that. You deserve it more than I do.
Actually, we are a close-knit family, and we just want to make sure that we look out for everyone's opportunities and feelings and that sort of thing. And with that, it's my bedtime.
Oh, you're muted, Han. Han, you're muted. I'm sure you're saying wonderful things. Start over.
Okay.
There you go.
All I was trying to say was Don and Paul and Joe, you guys are like brothers, and I appreciate the support. And with that, I know that you said this is your bedtime, Paul. I will get together with you on a different time to go over a few things.
Okay.
Are there any other comments, questions before we adjourn the meeting?
I just want to say one more thanks to Lieutenant Jameson, Chief Maloon, and Chief Hernandez for, being out there, keeping us safe, and then, bringing us, this information about the new, what's going on.
Yes.
Yeah, I really appreciate these exchanges as well. So glad you guys are engaged and active.
Thank you.
Any others?
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Well, before that, I would like to thank Acting Chief Hernandez, Lieutenant Tyler. I see Captain Morales on here, Chief Maloon, Councilmember Dominguez, especially Tony for all the work and for all the coordinations. And commissioners, I call you guys brothers and sisters. Thank you for the support. And with that, I take your motion to adjourn the meeting. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Stay safe.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Hey, Don, real quick before you sign off, what's your email? I got something I wanted to run by you, but I'll do it offline.
Donald Clendenin at yahoo.com.
ELEN.
DENIN.
At Yahoo, you said?
Yahoo. Yeah.
And it's just all one word. There's no space
Nope.
or hyphen or anything. All right.
Nope.
I'll
Nope.
shoot you an email tonight and then kind of
Okay.
what I wanted to talk to you about, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Thanks.
Talk to you later, Don. Have
Bye.
a good night.